Hey, I'm Scott.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Doxalogic, where we help you think with your Bible.
Hello and welcome back, beloved listeners. We are here with a Mailbag episode. Scott and Chris, it is a great joy to be back here at the table.
It's good to see you guys.
Good to be with you, Bree.
I realize I kind of move around my microphone to see you.
It's okay. I can see you.
Hi, guys.
If you're on video, if you're not on video, you missed it. That's okay.
You might want to watch.
That's a plug for the YouTube crowd,
channel.
apparently. Yeah.
I was realizing that the next episode that will be released is the 100th episode.
Yes.
Who
would have thought we would have got to 100?
Long gone are the days of you guys just recording audio in a tiny room.
Yeah.
Look at you now.
Look at us now, Bree.
We're with you. Look at you now. We are with the great Bree,
the
one,
and cameras,
the only.
lights and
camera.
I mean, the budget is just massive now for actually everything we have is basically borrowed from everything the church already had.
Yep,
true.
And really smart, you know?
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm excited to just see what the favorite moments end up being from you guys, listeners.
Really interested.
Yeah.
Can they still put those in? Are we...
Well, I think according to the timeline, by the time they're listening to this, probably not.
Too late. You snooze,
yeah.
you lose.
You'll have to get it.
You'll have to listen to what other people said.
The 500th episode.
Right.
You'll have to submit your favorite moments. Yeah. So I feel like that'll be really exciting. So that'll be the next episode released after the current one you're listening to.
Cool.
100th episode of Doxalogic, a milestone. Well done, guys. That's awesome.
Scott, do you remember that time when we calculated when it was your 100th sermon? And
that
we gave you
was a highlight, actually.
And we gave you a trophy.
Yeah. You found a trophy.
We bought a trophy.
You bought a trophy.
We had a trophy made of a guy it was like a guy giving a speech.
Yes.
And it was a large
podium.
trophy. Yes, it was a speech on a podium.
It was like in February of 2015 or 16 or something.
16 probably.
Yeah.
I just remember coming up to you. We had I think we had two services at that point. So we were 2 years old, but not by much. And me and Emily Pagan counted out how many times you had preached to 100. And I walked up to you after you had preached, and I stood next to you, and you kind of looked at me, and I was in the aisle basically, and I said, I don't know if you remember this. I said, "Hey, do you trust me, right? Or do you trust me?" And you're like, we're like 2 years in together, but
no,
And
I don't.
No, actually. Thankfully, you said yes. You said, yeah, I do. I said, okay, just let me do what I'm about to do. And you were like, okay, finishing out the song.
So
and then I come up, and everyone else on staff and everything else unfolded from there, and it was hilarious. What a good
actually
moment.
stands
100
out.
sermons.
Yes. That stands out as one of the just sweet memories. Unexpected, totally off. You would have never, how would you have known that you were anything was going to happen for 100 sermons?
Erin was pregnant with your third, Emma.
Yeah.
And you guys went to San Francisco.
We did for
as
an
the
overnight.
gift.
Yes, it was
Gave
so
you a
much
trophy.
fun.
And
it was a
went
gift.
An overnighter. And my
Super
memory's
thoughtful.
coming back. It was Super Bowl day.
Yep. And it was the easiest to San Francisco to get into San Francisco ever because they were going to Santa Clara.
It was down to Santa Clara.
Yeah.
So San Francisco.
So great.
Super Bowl Sunday. It was February of probably 17.
You're 100% right.
Is that right? Was she born in 17?
No, 16.
She was born in 16.
January 16.
Okay, she was. Yeah. Wow, it's all coming back. All off the number 100. That's a very long introduction now, but for those who weren't here, and that's most people, you would not know that.
Yeah.
We gave you this trophy for your
awesome.
100th sermon.
Super special.
A little getaway. That was fun.
That's so fun.
Okay.
That's a fun memory. Okay, are you guys ready to jump into these questions?
Who's going to surprise us for the podcast?
Just another trophy to add to your shelf.
Passive aggressive. Gee, wouldn't it be so cool if?
I will say that somebody is counting up to your 500th.
Yeah.
Well, isn't everybody in the sense that we keep track of?
Well,
your 500 sermon.
Yeah.
Oh.
Someone may or may not be keeping a tally.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Now,
Chris isn't even involved in it.
No, I'm not. Is it 2 per week? Is it every sermon he's preaching?
Probably different sermon.
No, like
week.
Each
per
week
he's preaching. All right.
Because I think
you were at 10 years.
Even before the launch
you gotta
of
be a 400 something.
Yeah.
Right now,
I
42-ish a year. Who can say?
40-ish sermons a year, right? 40 out of 52, 40. I think the most I ever preached was 44.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
Out of
52. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that would be just from the start of this church because you've preached
before.
Right. Yeah. So
Are you
500.
counting my
Easy.
Spanish messages too?
I wish I could, because you'd probably already be past 500 at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get extra points for doing another language.
That's so good.
Yeah. All right.
Let's
Question
go.
time. Okay. First question reads like this: Is the Bible Project biblically correct?
Okay, Bible
So specific.
Project. Tim Mackey is the most well known. He's got a ministry partner with the Bible Project, doesn't he? Or is it largely his?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
He has a partner.
He does.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
But Tim Mackey's the lead.
Tim Mackey's the lead guy. I will say, kind of historically, I can think of many times where I've really appreciated his condensed way of describing a biblical topic or a book of the Bible
Sure.
and describing what the narrative is, how it points to Christ, all these things.
Yep.
And yet the question comes in part now because there are legitimate concerns these days about directions that he's just opening up. Either confusing or at the very least unclear. Like, wait a minute, man, where are you on some of these important issues?
Yeah, right. So without getting into it, again, these are questions just flying at us, so we're responding. And I know sometimes people get a little bit upset. It's like, hey, if you don't know the extent of these things, we don't try to talk about what we don't know anyway. But to say what I have heard is there's some concerns about his doctrine of hell. There's concerns about the way he speaks about the atonement, particularly that aspect of propitiation, which seems to not, stays away from the wrath of God being satisfied in the death of Christ for sinners. And, but I think it's better rather than going, here are these things. And I think there are some concerns, and I think people have noted those concerns, and I think some of them are serious concerns. But the way I would look at it is, develop a solid biblical theology yourself, and then you can leverage certain aspects of the Bible Project. To your point, I do really enjoy the Bible book overviews and how it kind of divides it up into chapters and stuff. That those things are helpful, and they're not all unbiblical. So the question of, are they biblical? A lot of it is biblical, and there's some views that the lead guy, the creator, Tim Mackey, seems to perpetrate now that are simply concerning, and they are concerning. And if that stuff is finding its way, and I don't know the ins and outs of the Bible Project, I don't use the Bible Project in any consistent way, but look for it, be aware of it. And I think the person asking the question is really, in a sense, answering their own question, which is, you've got your antennas peaked by merely asking us, and I'm going to affirm, keep your antenna peaked. But I would affirm that in a lot of ways across the board.
Right, I was just going to
keep
say,
your antenna peaked across the board.
There are precious few living today people that are, let's call them noteworthy, well-known, famous within, evangelical circles, precious few that you don't have to qualify at all. There's either call it a scandal, call it an issue, a church leadership thing, a theological thing, a tradition they come from, on and on we could go. And so I am getting more and more tired or whatever of this, personally, I've come to really appreciate a large portion of what this person might do or say. But I'm aware there's some sensitivities, and so when I'm maybe public facing or something, I'm gonna maybe bring in a little bit, but shy away from using this person's name because people overreact or whatever, and I'm kind of over that. And so there are just very, very few, if really any, that you wouldn't say, there's a couple of things here that you need to be concerned about.
Well, and I think about it too from the perspective of, while they're still living, there's still a question mark of where they're going to go. Dead people are easier because you just know their whole story, right? So you can quote a John Stott and say, he was involved in the evangelicals and Catholics together. If you
even
need to
some
make
of the
that
ugly
nuance.
parts,
sure. But his story is finite and finished. So you can have a lot more comfort. The problem with quoting guys today is they can move. And I think to the question, I don't either. Tim Mackey's held some of those views that are concerning and people are making note of, which you could get online if you just Google some of these things. Even if you Googled the question, you get it online. What are the concerns? He either held those concerns before and that wasn't clear, or he's moved in that trajectory over time. Either way, the fact that he's alive, making videos, all that stuff, is to say we should be concerned about everyone in that sense, that we all have the ability, unfortunately, to go rogue in some way theologically, and therefore we should be concerned. So yes, I think it's good to have your antennas up, and we also think that there's a lot of good things on the Bible Project. So,
It's not the next thing we'll be canceling. It's not our job to do, and just not interested in weighing into that level that we have to put. Basically, the whole conscience thing comes up again, right? Trying to tell this person now you can't. Not going to be the thing you're going to find us doing.
Yeah, and I guess for me too, it's hard because it's not my go-to. I don't go, I'm going to study the book of blah, blah, blah. Let's see what the Bible Project says about it. That's just not personally my thing. So if that's your thing, then I would definitely say you all the more should have your antenna peaked if that's the first place you go to study a book of the Bible or something like that. But it would be peripheral from how I would see it anyway, in terms of what the Bible Project is.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Next question reads like this. Is Proverbs 22:6 a promise that children raised in a Christian home will grow up to be Christians?
So, well-known verse in Proverbs. I'll read it here. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Got to realize where this is situated in Scripture. This is in Proverbs. And so Proverbs is... obviously it's 31 chapters, but it's a litany of proverbial wisdom, not universal, ironclad, never an exception guarantees. These are principles to live by. These are not the same thing as a different book of the Bible where God is, speaking and he's making an unalterable, unchangeable declaration about something, about himself, which God is free to do. But here, because it's in the book of Proverbs, we have to just right up front, where am I reading this in? I'm reading this in the book of Proverbs. Now, that being said, let's not strip away the importance of what this is saying, that we need to train up a child in the way he should go. And that's the instruction of the Lord. That's, I don't know if the Hebrew, Scott, is Torah there, the way. I'm not sure.
I can look it up.
It may be, but go ahead. I think I'd appreciate knowing that.
Yeah.
But the way he should go, the instruction he should follow in the Lord ultimately, even when he's old, he will not depart from it. There's a sense in which you'll say, even when he's old, he will not depart from it. We don't have to take that as an eternal, he will be saved, as much as he will never be able to depart from the knowledge of what he was raised in and is responsible. This is what one thing you're giving all your children, if you're raising them up with the knowledge of the gospel, is that they are accountable to God for what they now have heard. And they've heard, hopefully, a faithful, consistent, lived out in your life, fear of God, love of Christ, and trust in the gospel, and that they won't be able to depart from it. They won't be able to shake it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same thing as they will never walk away from it or be lost.
Yeah. I imagine like everybody else, like how you grew up shapes you in a variety of ways. Not saying that everyone holds on to those values as that their parents imposed as when they were kids, but like that shapes you growing up.
Sure. Yeah. I would say also that generally speaking, this is true, right? These are truisms in the sense that they're a manifestation of rebellion later on doesn't negate the truth of this text, because it's not meant to be. And every one of your kids who's trained up in a knowledge of the Lord will never act rebellious ever again. And so I think it's that kind of direct interpretive issue that causes a lot of the problem in going, wait, I put my trust in, if I just did this, then they would never depart from it. And I appreciated the distinction that you got in there, Chris. I'm looking at and pulling up the Hebrew right now. You're gonna have to.
Do we fill time? So,
intermission.
Bree, while that's going on.
Yeah.
But I know that, and I feel for parents. I'm my oldest is 10 basically now. He's turning 10 in April here, and so I'm not in the place where I can look back on this with the type of sorrow some parents do, where they put, in a sense, too much stock in this, like they created a universal guarantee out of it, and no one would ever say they're doing this, but it ends up this way sometimes in our hearts, formulaic. The input that I give to them mandates by this verse the output of personal faith in Jesus and a consistent walking out with my kids, or in all of my kids' lives. And that's just it's a dangerous overloading of verses that I want to be compassionate to the person who's grieving. And some people will also turn inward on themselves. The guilt is train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. Well, mine did depart from it. So what did I not do?
Yeah.
I didn't train them up in the way they should go properly. Well, okay, who has in terms of some perfectionistic standard of, and I never had any misalignment in my character with the gospel. Yeah, you did. Everybody does. I never a moment of anger, a moment of harshness toward my child, whatever it was. Like it was my fault because there it is. Like he departed, so it's my fault. And gosh, there's just of all the verses in Proverbs, this is quite a statement given how many there are. This one might be the most overloaded, and more is imported to it than it's actually saying.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at it right here, and I don't see. Let's see, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's how I would understand it. I wouldn't really add much to it than that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that's super helpful, guys. Thanks for speaking into that one. Okay, moving on. The next question is gambling a sin? Scott, this will be important for you to answer for Chris's life.
Yeah, right.
How do you know I didn't submit it? Well, Bree does know. I had a question. It was different. I won't bother, but it was just as direct about something else. And it's like what I wanted to tell this person was before it's about the specific activity, it's going to be about the heart.
Yeah.
And so the idea of ever having a friendly wager with friends that, if I win this golf round, you owe me $10 or I owe you $10. That's just, let's not think about that type of thing the same way we think about the addictive element of casino gambling with no clocks around and all the lights and hundreds of dollars or more that you don't belong spending and don't have. And let's not, like gambling, not all gambling is the same, and you can have fun as a wager, but you do have to be cautious with that. But gambling is a sin when in our hearts we are seeking something from gambling that we're really not entrusting to the Lord. I would say we are seeking immediate reward of money through maybe our skill at kind of our skill / luck at 21 or poker or something like that, but also just the rolling of dice and the gambling or the pulling of the machine to get the thousands of dollars that they're being promised. Our hearts are drawn towards things like that are material, that are pulling us away from a trust and a contentment in God. And so that's where the sin resides. Not every time you pull the lever or bet $5 with a friend, the sin resides in where our heart goes to those things is one way I would say it as a start.
Yeah, and it's easy to lose money. And when you lose money, you can become easily enslaved to it. Right. So where your heart is, there your treasure will be also, right? Like, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Thank you.
That was funny.
Yeah, I was like, no, that wasn't right. But that idea is really important, and you start to find out in that moment what you worship in that moment, right? And it can be really quick. That moment towards idolatry can happen very, very quickly, right? And it can flip on a moment. So when you see yourself now inclined, whoops, I spent too much money on that bet, lost it, and now I got to go get it back. I've got to, it starts to become very easily enslaving. And so, to your point, Chris, it's such a broad category. I think of just even just the general principle of something like a 1 Corinthians 6, the idea of all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be enslaved by anything. I'm speaking into the principle. I'm not saying, oh yeah, this is about gambling and this is what this means. But I think the idea of not being enslaved to anything is a helpful, stopgap between you calling playing poker for $20 with your friends sin, I'm going to say that's not where I'm falling in that. I don't see scripture that's going to be like, yeah, that's sinful, but that you're enslaved to something and that you can take this to a sinful level. Absolutely. When you think back in the older days, the forms of entertainment, gambling was right at the top, right? And so what did you see people putting away? Cards. Like, I'm a Christian now, so I don't engage in basic frivolities. I don't engage in forms of entertainment. Our forms of entertainment now are so diverse, so spread out, so many various angles that we would actually do well to listen to some of the older guys who, in wanting to grow in maturity in their faith, really reined in their worldly pleasure indulgence, really reined in the amount that they were participating in things like cards, like plays, like you name those entertainments at the time. It's kind of humorous when we think in comparison to today, because we're like, cards, plays, that's the normal stuff. We'll stay away from whatever the newer and
the sins of the age that seem worse
we've
now
just taken
today,
entertainment on steroids now, right?
Yeah.
So that idea just seems so it's hard to relate to. But I would say that there is a principle there of going, there's worldliness that is wrapped around engagement in that world that we should I think be cautious with anyway. So is it wise is a question I would have.
Just on my mind, wise versus foolish.
Yes. Is it
was
wise?
on my mind as a category. Not always sin, but wise versus foolish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does it bring glory to Christ? Is it, can it be honoring to God in some way? Those are some of the questions that you would probably want to ask yourself, when you're hanging out with friends and you're just spending time together and you're watching March Madness and you're like, okay, $20 as this guy hits the game winner. Like, I'm not sure you're going to give an account for that as sin. That wouldn't be the position I'm in, but I do think that gambling can lead to all kinds of different forms of sin.
Yeah, that's fair. So blanket statement, check your heart. Yeah, and not just with gambling.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, that could have been a lot shorter, Bree, if you would have just, done that for us.
We're
It's always
long-winded.
Bree just
We're long-winded
wrapping
to
it up
begin
in
with.
just the crystal
your heart,
clarity that
yeah.
we need.
Yep.
All right. Next question. Do grandparents have a biblical call or responsibility in the lives of their grandchildren? That's fascinating question.
It is fascinating.
Oh, man, I love that question so much.
Why do you love it?
Because having kids has reoriented the value of grandparenting. From a couple different angles. Number one, the help provided is such a gift, and you go, wow. Now I see, when my grandma and grandpa would come over, how much that was a blessing to the parents, just because the kids they're a handful, and the great, most glorious blessing kind of way. Yeah, exactly. But
Lest
that
they ever hear
blessing,
that.
absolutely, and to watch the joy that grandparents get and getting to participate in that. So again, we're trying to ground this in scripture as much as we can. And so I think of the first verse that comes to mind with grandparenting is like the Proverbs 13. Let's look it up. Proverbs 13, 20 something, where it talks about the
Leaving an
wise man
inheritance,
leaves an
yeah.
inheritance, to their children's children. So you've got that kind of generational dynamic to this. So a good man, this is Proverbs 13:22, leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Now, what I love about that is a framework to answer this question kind of by borrowing a principle from that is there's intentionality that's going into thinking about not just your own kids, but your kids' kids. About a kind of legacy that you're passing on. And yes, an inheritance, it's not less than financial, but it's more than financial in a lot of different ways. But I think should be, at least from a principial level, considered in what kind of legacy are you leaving? What are you instilling in your children's children? And there does bear a kind of responsibility in that role that I would say, if it includes financial preparation and intentionality, why wouldn't it also be safe to say it includes a kind of spiritual, a kind of a physical, relational dynamic to that as well? And then when you combine that to the idea of a grandparent is not now, I mean, we get this whole idea of we retire so we don't have to do Christian things anymore. Like, we know that's not true. And we know you're still making disciples. And the disciples that you are entrusted to you under the wing of your family should be really, really important to you. And you have this unique role that you're not in the day-to-day weeds of like the hands-on, serving that the mom and dad are. You get to come in. And I would just say there's such an opportunity. I'm really compelled by the opportunity that's there. I'm compelled by the legacy piece of establishing a gospel legacy unto multiple generations and our responsibility for that, the grandparents' responsibility and leading in that way, to modeling that, to investing in those kids. And you don't have to do it. One of the things I hear about grandparents all the time is it's so great I get to give them back to their parents at the end, right? But if you're wise, you can love those grandkiddos, you can bless your daughter or son, and you can make this kind of impact that is Christ honoring and hopefully not only establishes an inheritance, financially, but spiritually as well.
I love the multi-generational impact it can have for just being like a godly example and like a great witness to your kids and your kids' kids.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I think of a variety of passages, none of which are going to name grandparents. That's like, do I have a biblical responsibility?
Biblical call or responsibility.
Biblical call or responsibility. You absolutely can and ought to extrapolate it from the principles of Scripture. So first and foremost, of just making disciples. To your point, Matthew 28 and other places, we're going to make disciples, and unto what and what are you doing in your family to make disciples, including not only your immediate generation following, but generation that comes after them? I think of Titus 2 and the older women to the younger women teaching, and that is definitely in the church. We can assume they're both adults, older women to younger women, but you can extrapolate that to older women who have grandkids to their granddaughters. For example, I think about 1 John 2, writing to little children, writing to sons, writing to fathers. This is John as an old man writing to different segments of this is again in the church, but we can take it into the family. And then 3 John verse 4, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. And like, how much more can you, by principle, say as a grandparent, I want all these things to be part of my legacy, that I want my children and my grandchildren, by God's grace, to be living in the truth, and I want to have something to do with that. I want to have something to do with that.
That's cool.
And I think even the idea of like the temptation as a grandparent is to look at the situation and go, I already did that. I did that already. Right? The idea of parenting. And so you want this big separation. And I would just say, if that's in the heart, check that with the Lord. Yes, you've done that already, but don't let that be like and so I don't want the inconvenience. I don't want the responsibility. I don't want any of that stuff. That can be a thing. And, it can be selfish. And again, it's not your responsibility. You're not the parents, right? And I get that. And it is different. And praise God. And you have raised those kids to be able to care for those kids, ideally, right? And so all of that is true. But hopefully it's a I get to versus a I've done that already and let's keep that distance. I would want more, I guess, is what I would say. I would want more. I think there is more. I think God has more for a grandparent than that. And so that would be my hope for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, last question for this episode before we move on to our news segment that we're doing. What should a Christian sports fan do when all of the major leagues and teams are fully behind the LGBTQ agenda?
A sports fan.
What should
Chris, you like sports, right?
What should they do?
Bree?
Not as much as Bree.
Bree loves sports.
She's got a shirt.
Sports.
She's got a shirt that
So
just
do
says sports. You both have one, right?
High
Am I
five.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, matching tees.
It's solidarity
sports
for
on it.
sporting.
Yeah, solidarity. I admire you guys' love of
Go
sports.
team.
But really, what do they do? One option, and so I would say there's a conscience principle here, where for one, it may be there's just a full-on not the word like canceled or whatever, but you're going to just cancel your following. You're done. You're done with the team. You're done with the sport, maybe, or you just don't watch. I know a lot of people got completely turned off to football pro or whatever, and they're never going back. And it's like, okay, that's not a bad decision, but I also have room for the fact that it's not everyone's decision. Same thing with the NHL, the National Hockey League, has got quite a conundrum going on in that it was a very few number of hockey players that were refusing to come out in the rainbow colors. They were literally wearing given warm-up jerseys with the rainbow colors to have Pride Month, which I thought was only in June. It turns out it can be any time of the year now. And a couple of, interestingly enough, international, like Ukrainian or Russian hockey players who were Christians refused on religious grounds, and they got more or less just crucified in the media. However, it emboldened slowly a few more on each team. So now that almost every team has dissenters on Christian conviction, not just, I don't like it. They're speaking about their faith and, the religious liberty thing, right? And so they've got quite a conundrum going on to hopefully renege what they've been doing. But for the fan, you can do nothing and continue watching and pray that this changes, or you can't completely cancel it. I don't think there's only one solution.
Yeah.
Well, this stinks because you used to watch sports to kind of
escape that,
get
right?
out of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, this is why I'm doing this tonight. I wanted to watch this. I'm not. And unfortunately, it's become where, people have been really dumb about this. Like, you're an athlete. You don't have anything to say. Like, don't say that. They're also not an expert on politics. They're also not. That's true. But if you go that way, it just sounds so like demeaning and dehumanizing, even to just be like, you're an athlete, so you have nothing to say. You may have something to say, but the platform is sports. And so give us sports, and unfortunately it feels like everything this day has to come with some sort of allegiance to a particular worldview, to a particular, LGBTQIA plus, you name it, sort of thing. And it's sad. It's sad, honestly, because, and again, in a limited way that don't take over your life, because sports easily can. Sports can be a sweet gift. And it's just sad to see that going that way. And then you think about, it's not just professional sports, it's college sports, because what college isn't, that's public, isn't kind of walking down the woke or the Marxist
or the transgender stuff now.
All kinds of different issues there. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of my brother, who is a professional athlete in the MLS, which is Major League Soccer, and has refused himself to wear the same thing, Chris. I don't remember if it was the trans flag or colors or just the rainbow kind of thing, but had some pushback about his saying, hey, I'm not going to do that. At the beginning, he was kind of confused as to how he should handle it, because he wants to make sure it's like, hey, listen, we love people, but love doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing. It rejoices with the truth, 1 Corinthians 13 says. So if I'm going to love, then I can't support this demonic, expression of ungodliness, really. And so he's pushed back against that as well. But there is a prevailing culture in sports that is woven into the very fabric of the highest levels of the sport, that it's going to be hard for you to stand up. In fact, I know, because of Aaron's past with the U.S. national team, that there are certain individuals on that team with strong Christian convictions that they'd rather just not pick up and keep in the pool of players, because they can probably find a replacement for you, and they'd rather have people towing
not
that
have the
line.
headache of having a dissenter.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting. So I don't remember what the question was.
What should they do?
What should a Christian sportsman do?
Oh, yeah. You have to wrestle with that.
Yep.
And you, I think, you're free to make more than one decision to address what is a real issue. And so it depends on the person.
Yep. Yeah. I'll have no problem giving up sports.
Yeah, giving it up. And I just don't watch as many sports myself, and I've been the better for it. I've not missed watching sports as much as I did when I was younger.
Yeah, it's not like a life-altering thing that you need to live.
In that sense, it could be a gift.
Yeah.
The Lord's hemming you in with your sports watching, and now you're kind of like, I'm put off by that. Well, praise be to God, maybe in that sense, that it's redeeming some of your time to focus on other things.
Yep. Well, thanks, guys. Chris, I think you might be taking over this honorable mentions bit.
Yeah. We've been doing something the last
custom,
couple episodes here. Honorable mention, something that we're reading or listening to, enjoying spiritually. It's helping us understand the world, God, His Word, whatever it might be that we want to just say, hey, consider this. If you want to look for something to buy, whatever it might be. And then something fun, something personally you're enjoying doing. And so... Bree, you want to go first?
Wow, sure.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, something I'm reading right now is called Letter of Consolation. I don't know if you guys heard of that. It's from a French pastor called Pierre Verret.
Yes,
yeah.
I have read
so
it.
originally,
I haven't read it, I've heard
yeah, originally written in French, but translated to English by Christian Fantoni. I wrote his name down so I wouldn't forget. It's a short book, about 50 pages, but it's super rich in gospel hope. And so Pierre was a pastor in like the early days of the Reformation. And so he was writing letters of consolation to any Christians who like hung out in France during like the oppressive part of the Roman Catholic Church, just because there wasn't like an abundance of pastors to shepherd them. And so he really dedicated a lot of his life to kind of growing Protestantism in the heart of Europe. And so he went on later to publish his letters so it could have a larger reach. And so he made a huge impact in the early Reformation days, which is cool. And I feel like I picked it up and because of its... he really wanted to write the letters to help people suffer well and encourage them to live a godly life. And so I think I really wanted to read it, and it's doing the work. I'm just about halfway through, further shaping like my theology around suffering.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of reinforcing that like any physical affliction I have is really a gift. And it really it's helping me see and like with more clarity that my suffering allows me to just experience the promises of Scripture in a more tangible way. That's like a tool that the Lord uses to refine us. And so I think at the end of the day, the flesh is the flesh and it will always care about itself. And so like no wonder God puts us in the refining fire so that we place our heart and our hope and trust in Him over the corruptible and fleeting things of earth. And so I've really enjoyed it. It's short, but it kind of reminds me of like a lot of the like work of the Puritans, just like so rich and so like enduring and hopeful. And so I couldn't recommend it even more, even though I'm not done reading it yet. I've really liked it.
Letter of Consolation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
How about you, man?
What are we doing? Which one is this?
The serious one first. The Bible
I know what we're
one,
doing
the enriching
That was my
one.
for fun one.
Yeah, seriously. If that was
the enriching one. Oh man, I'm always in several books just because of things I'm studying, things I'm preparing for, things I'm walking through with others. I have a lot of thoughts on what I'm going to go with. The Imperfect Pastor.
good.
That's a great book.
That's a favorite of yours.
I'm in it
it's
as
a
well
book
right now,
we're all reading as pastors as a group by Zach Eswine. And I've read it now. I think it's my fourth time reading it. It's probably the most frequently I've come back to this book time and time again, and I've read it different every single time. And it's got a lot of great points, but at the foundation, it helps a pastor kind of navigate the sort of modern pressures of the expectations of what a pastor is and how that's different than what the scriptures talk about and what a daily apprenticeship looks like with Jesus is not large and fast and famous. And it's not everyone has these expectations for what a pastor's supposed to do and get them there and personally make every ministry they want happen and all of this stuff. And, he'll start to like describe something like, do you feel like you can't be in two places at once and that's frustrating and that you have as a result let people down? And he starts to go through this and you're like, yeah, story of my life. And he goes, and you're bummed that you can't do it, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm totally bummed. And he basically goes into several attributes of God like that, like omnipresence, and goes, you shouldn't repent that you can't be present to everyone at a given time or even in general as much as they would want. You should repent forever thinking that you could be or should be.
It's powerful.
It's really a great read. And like I said, it reads different every time. There's so many stories that are just like, yep, that is really helpful, like a balm to my soul as a pastor. So it's been really good.
That's awesome. What about you, Chris?
There's a book there are several as well, but one that picked up a while ago, it just didn't crack until recently. It's called The Book That Made Your World. The subtitle is How the Bible Created the Soul of Western Civilization. Mm-hmm. It's by an Indian Christian named Vishal Mangalwadi, I think. It is really, really good. It's a societal, historical perspective from this, as in he's from India, and he continually goes back to, as a Christian from India, recognizing the English colonization of India. And while there were problems with it, there were great forward movements made because of Britain's biblical worldview, broadly speaking. And then, so he talks about the formation of science. He talks about the formation of justice and the formation of human rights. And every chapter is a big, theme about how historically the Bible ultimately paved the way for X, or the Bible made the defense of X make sense. Human rights, for example, and things like that. It's very, very interesting. It has overachieved, so to speak, for what I thought it was when I originally bought it. It's very, very good.
That's cool.
Yeah. So fun. Tell me something, Bree, that you do for fun right now. What's something or just recreation? What are you enjoying?
Yeah.
What's something that just bring us into the personal life of Bree Harn? You're like, a mystery to people.
Are you ready?
Probably not the way you said that.
Let's
but
go.
I am
ready.
Yeah, Scott's ready.
Water aerobics.
Oh my gosh.
Did I get it?
No. That's like a sport, right?
That is a sport.
I don't do that. Something I enjoy right now, so I really like stationery because I really love like handwritten notes. And so surprise, surprise, I have all black stationery. But I was thinking of ways to like, how do I expand upon my enjoyment of stationery, or just like writing friends notes? And so I've been dabbling in like wax seals, like a seal stamp. And so
that's cool.
That's been really fun. There's like so many options, and I got like a really cool, Luther, my husband, got me like a stamp seal that has like the letter B on it. And so it's like,
that's cool.
I don't know. I think it's like really fun to be intentional and
that is fun.
Encourage people with
Well
written
done,
word.
Luther.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right up her alley.
What about you, bro?
I was just thinking about Scotland. We're going to Scotland for a church planning conference. I'll be preaching. Erin's coming. She's going to do some breakouts with pastors' wives, and we're going to get about a couple days afterwards. And so we're thinking about and really excited for going to St. Andrews, going to Edinburgh, going west, and kind of, obviously they're cool places in general, but kind of tracing some of the church history that's in every place. You think St. Andrews, that's golf capital kind of thing, but which it is, and that's important. But
yeah, don't diss that.
There's also...
wasn't it John Knox? Who did Sinclair?
Samuel Rutherford is buried there.
Rutherford.
Yeah,
okay.
At least Samuel Rutherford is buried there.
Maybe that was him. Okay.
And I don't know if that's true or not.
Maybe not.
He mentioned Robert Bruce as well, but anyway, there's some good history there. And then you come into Edinburgh, and you've got John Knox is in Edinburgh. There's the old house, and just where
Edinburgh.
Yeah, Edinburgh. And then the western areas.
Like,
where
did you have to learn how to pronounce that?
Yeah,
before
Edinburgh.
you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't sound like a complete idiot when I go there.
Foreigner.
I will.
You'll do a great job sounding like an idiot other times. Don't worry about it. As would I.
That is so rude. I'm really glad you did that though, because it makes it seem like you make fun of me more, and I'm glad that's the outward perspective.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, finish your thought. Yeah.
That in the western area of Scotland is where the Scottish Covenanter country is, and that's where a lot of like the Scottish Presbyterians and the Church of Scotland, like graveyards where many of them were buried that are still there today, and being able to visit those and see what was written on their headstones and those kind of things, and just appreciating the rich history of the Reformation in Scotland, and then obviously going to see the castles, and we're going to do some of the like Harry Potter looking stuff that's out there. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Side note, I really believe that we should have our own cemetery.
Yeah, you said that. You've talked to Tony about.
That's another weird thing about me. I think that's
Church has had it. Church has had it as common, and it was, you're part of the body,
to
and
have
you'll
a
be
church
raised
was to have a cemetery.
Yeah,
When we're resurrected, we just see each other.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Wow.
Party.
I don't know how to transition to what I was going to say.
Sorry, what's your fun thing
it wasn't
you're
about
enjoying?
death,
Who do you wanna bury
or
in the front yard?
cemeteries. Okay, so that's not for the audience to hear. But I would say my wife, Noelle, is a phenomenal cook, and she makes sourdough, a lot of different sourdough things. And the most fun so far for us is grilling sourdough pizza.
Let's go.
Wow.
It is so good.
When are we coming over?
Thinking about it right now. So we have a pellet grill and a separate pellet smoker. So she'll grill the first part and then she'll put it onto the smoker. So
Wow.
she'll
Yeah,
actually
she will. That
she
sounds
will
awesome.
smoke the
Wow.
sourdough with the toppings, the cheese, and it's a smoked and grilled sourdough pizza, guys. It is outrageously good.
You are blessed, Chris.
Is that on the
beyond
Joyful
belief.
Table, Chris?
Oh, the Joyful
I was gonna
Table
say,
is my
yeah.
wife's blog, food blog. Shout out when she hears this, she's going to roll her eyes so hard. But you brought it up, thejoyfultable.blogspot.com.
Just a moment from our
Let me
sponsor,
repeat
the
that
Joyful
again.
Table.
Thejoyfultable.blogspot.com is my wife's food blog. Had it for a long time, but it's now been a longer time since she's ever written on it. Ever since our second child was born, in fact, and she's now 6.
Yeah,
But
still really good
and the
recipes
pictures
on there.
of me, the
Yeah.
pictures of me or us or Colton, and the explanations of where our lives were in seminary days and even after, you guys will get a kick out of that.
A little
if you
bit
wanna
of-
check
a little
it
bit
out.
of Ritter history
Maybe
there.
she'll pick something up every once in a while again, but she has just a few things going on in her life, so I don't
Yeah.
want to pressure that.
That-
You guys can do that, not my place.
Yeah, I'll happily tell people to look at.
But anyways, the pizza is like
I love pressuring Noelle
out of
into
this world
things.
good.
Oh, no.
Well, you're the
Dog
reason
figured
yeah,
out.
Oh, no.
You're part of the
Yes.
reason she relented and got us a dog
Yes.
finally.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Rocky Ritter. Finally got my Rocky.
She's really not going to like this last
Love
part.
him. No, she's probably not, but that's okay.
Well, that was fun.
That was fun.
I like honorable mentions. Well, guys, this concludes this mailbag episode. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks again for sending in your questions. We really appreciate it. Until next time.
You've been listening to Doxalogic, a podcast by Doxa Church in Rockland, California. To learn more, visit us online at doxa.church.